Hold on just a second. Let me get your grade sheet going. Alright, if you want to start, if you already did, that's fine too. And then Maddie, whenever you're ready, I'm ready for you.
Okay. When you think of swimming, you usually think of the summertime when you're out of school, or when you go to the beach and you're laying on the beach. But when I think of swimming, I think of the hardship of training and can I start over?
Mm-hmm. Okay, take a breath. You can do it. Take a breath. It's okay. You good?
Yeah.
It's all good. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Whenever.
All right. One more time.
Okay.
Take a breath. It's okay.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Whenever you think of swimming, you usually think of the beach or going to the pool, and you're out of school and you're just hanging out with friends. But when I think of swimming, I think of competition and racing my hardest and having those teammates to back you up. Competitive swimming is something probably everyone's heard of, maybe, or they've heard of Michael Phelps, the greatest swimmer and the most decorated Olympian of all time. Today I will be talking about competitive swimming and how it has changed over the past decades, the four strokes, and current Olympians. I am a reliable source because I've been swimming for 10 years and I swim here at EIU and it's actually very good. Okay. The first thing that has changed in swimming is that it hasn't always been in pools. The first signs of swimming were actually in lakes and oceans. And in the 2002 book by Cecile Coleman, she states the pool measured 39 feet long and 23 feet wide and were said to be the first signs of swimming, which means that they made pools by themselves, like in the ground, and that was the first like major sign of swimming ever. In 1896, only men could compete because women were less athletic, and of course sexism was a thing back then. And in the 2018 article by the website SwimSwam, they state that the first swimming Olympics were held in the Mediterranean Sea, and the second was held in Paris in the Seine River, which means that back then they probably had a lot of difficulty swimming than now because they had the current and they had animals in the ocean with them. And the second thing that was changed was in 1912, women were finally allowed to compete, which was a big step towards sexism during the time. But they were only allowed to compete in certain events, so they obviously weren't as great as men were. And of course, they wouldn't allow women to be as great as they were. And back in the 20th century, once women were allowed to swim, the swimsuits could only be to their knees. If they weren't to their knees, they weren't allowed to participate. And of course, boys' swimsuits were always really small, and they really didn't care. But women started wearing smaller swimsuits, which was a revolutionary thing because women's bodies weren't as covered, and they weren't as much hate on women showing their bodies. There used to be a full body swimsuit that men used to wear, and so did women, but it was soon banned in the early 2000s because of it allowed the swimmers to have too much drag release from their body, and it created a period of time where swimmers were swimming the fastest they've ever done, and people couldn't beat those times, so they had to ban it. In the times now, girls wear swimsuits that are to their knees to cause less drag from wearing just a swimsuit from their hips to their shoulders. The next thing I'll be talking about is the strokes. Butterfly is the first stroke, and it is the hardest in my opinion. The events that go with it are the 50, 100, and 200 meter or yard. In the 2014 article written by David Payne and Rick Sharp, graduates from the University of Canberra and Iowa State state that butterfly has a symmetrical movement pattern, which means that the arms and legs move at the same time. So the left side and the right side will have to do the same thing as each other. So how to swim butterfly is you move your arms together over the water and you kick in a dolphin kick, and yeah. The next stroke I'll be talking about is backstroke. The events that you swim are the 50, 100, and 200 yard or meter. It is the only stroke on your back and the only stroke that you don't have to change your technique to breathe. How you swim it is you do a flutter kick, moving one arm at a time. It's kind of like freestyle or the crawl stroke, but it's on your back. The next stroke is breaststroke. You do the 50, 100, and 200 yard or meter, and it's sometimes called the frog stroke because it looks like a frog. Breaststroke has the most drag out of all the strokes, and in the 2011 book by Ludovic Seifert states during these periods resistance forces are much greater than propulsive forces, which means that you have to put more momentum into your stroke to launch you forward because there's a lot more drag from the water. The last stroke I'll be talking about is freestyle, or a crawl stroke as non-swimmers know it as. And for these, the events are 50, 100, 200, 500, 1,000, and the mile. Freestyle is the only stroke where there are longer distances in competition because it's the only stroke that you can swim for longer periods of time. It is also the only stroke that you can swim any other stroke during the stroke and not get disqualified. The last thing I'll be talking about is the current Olympians. Of course, I'll be talking about Michael Phelps. He is the most decorated Olympian of all time, and he's won 28 medals, and he's earned World Swimmer of the Year 8 times. The next Olympian I'll be talking about is Ryan Lochte, which is a rival of Michael Phelps, and he's only won 12 medals. He's been a World Swimmer of the Year 1 time and was suspended by USA Swimming after the 2016 Olympics because of he destroyed the gas station after getting really drunk after he competed. In conclusion, swimming is way more than splashing around and having a fun time. It is competing and having strength. Okay.